Welcome back. Hour number 2 right here on the broadcast. For the next 2 hours, we are going to take you into realms of understanding that you never thought possible and completely and totally blow your mind. Your first reaction is going to be like my reaction was the millionth time that I heard this idea that we're about to present. But the millionth and first, I said, I'm going to listen with an open mind. Once I did, oh my God, the evidence started stacking up, on top of each other, one after another after another. So many holes in the sphere of reality that we live in. And it led me down more research. And I started talking about it. I was on Freaky Friday with Kev Baker, Joe Joseph. All of a sudden, my name became synonymous with this idea overnight, thanks to the ridicule of my friends. Then my friends started looking into it and saying, oh my God, the evidence is just mounting up one after another after another. Is the world really what we think it is? Is the world a globe? Is it a sphere? If we go in one direction, will we wind up in the other direction? Have you ever done that? I sure as hell haven't. What about pictures of the Earth? Have you ever actually seen a picture of the Earth? I haven't. I've seen computer-generated images. I've seen satellite composites. I've seen what's supposed to be the Earth spinning in full rotation, but the clouds aren't moving. I've seen the Red Bull jump, where, what's his name? The Red Bull guy?
Felix Baumgartner.
Baumgartner goes up to space, and you see a perfectly concave Earth. It looks beautiful. Until he starts to jump further down and you realize that the land is also concaving in itself, denoting that he's using a fisheye lens. When I presented the idea that the Earth might not be a globe, some people laughed. Some people resorted immediately to a logical fallacy. A logical fallacy, of course, is a flaw in reasoning. Logical fallacies are like tricks or illusions of thought. And they're often very sneaky and used by politicians and the media to fool people. Logical fallacies include appeal to emotion, appeal to ridicule, and appeal to authority. Because that's the way that they've said it was, and so that's the way it is, because that's the way it's always been. And if you question the status quo, then you're crazy. But most of the audience here can take the leap and say that we live in a matrix. Mainstream scientists are even saying that this reality is only created once it's viewed by somebody. There has to be an observer. So we can understand that. We can understand that the moon landing was fake. We can understand these ISIS videos, who Fox News, as a matter of fact, I was just on Coast to Coast with George, and we received some hate mail because all I did was just say that Fox News had it analyzed, and they say that the videos are fake, and people were writing George to say, I can't believe you're saying that ISIS is fake. Well, it is. And it's not me that's saying it. It's Fox News. It's their experts. But when the truth becomes so apparent that even the mainstream media has to acknowledge it. I was watching the eclipse on Sky News, and the reporter from Sky actually said, ladies and gentlemen, we want to assure you that the sun is round. It just looks flat on the screen, but we assure you that it's round. I thought, wow, how coincidental, because we're going to be talking about none other than flat Earth this evening. As my research started to grow, which this all took place over the course of like 72 hours. I got on the topic, and then I just fell down this rabbit hole that I was just, oh my God, just started researching. I came across a film called Flat Earth Clues. Mark Sargent is the filmmaker behind that. It's a short film. It's done very, very well. There's 10 parts. I want to say 10 parts, if I remember correctly. And each part is only about 4 or 5 minutes long. So you can absorb the information and then skip to the next part, or you can watch one part, put it down, watch another part in your free time. But when you start to see the way the cards are all laid down, one after another, after another, after another, I guarantee you that by the end of the film, you're going to go, oh my God, I've been lied to. And everything that I've thought was true has been told to me, and I've believed it out of the mouths of proven liars. That's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. So I urge everybody to listen this evening with an open mind. Put everything that you've been told to the side, because, as I said, none of us have been up to outer space to view the Earth from the perspective that they claim to be showing us. None of us have gone from one point in the Earth all the way around to the other point in the Earth. None of us have done that. None of us have traveled to the South Pole and come out the other end all the way back up to the North Pole again. They just tell us that that's the way the world works. And we believe it. Because there's a globe in every single classroom. They don't even have to say anything to you. These are Mark's words, so I don't want to take credit for it. But they don't even have to say anything to you. They just put that globe there. And after 12 years of you seeing that globe, you take it for fact. Now, if the Earth is flat, what does that mean? Now, I don't mean to jump too far ahead here, but I just want to kind of paint what I see, what conclusions there could be. Number one, that we're in a prison planet. Could very well be that. And that there's an artificial construct around us, a dome that has been placed on top of us and we can never escape. As I've said before, do the ants in the ant farm know that they're in an ant farm, or do they think that they're actually living in the ground? Could it be that there's more land on the other side, and that maybe this is all like a egg carton, where you have one section and then another and then another and then another, and we're told that those other sections don't exist, but in actuality there's a vast, vast, broad world out there if we can just break out of our little bubble. There's so many different places that this can go, but it's really, really important. What's fascinating, too, is that when I started talking about this, there was a little bit of ridicule, a lot less than I thought, but I actually received a lot of emails of praise, a lot of people saying, you know what, I felt this too. I just thought it was so silly that I never even bothered to look into it, but now that you're talking about it, thank you so much, because once I start going down this rabbit hole, I start to realize that the information is, or the facts are just piling up on top of each other, proving the analysis that the world is really not what we've been told it is. And it's all coming from Mark Sargent, who started out as a sous chef at a Greek restaurant. He won the first computer pinball world tournament in 1994. He was hired by a PC game publisher in Boulder, Colorado the same year, and he's played video games for a living until 1997. But he spends his free time doing what all of us do, which is unraveling the hidden truths of our civilization and the never-ending search for the meaning of life itself. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Don't regret what you've done, regret what you haven't done. Flat Earth Clues, ladies and gentlemen. You have to go to his YouTube channel, youtube.com/Mark Sargent, or just go to YouTube and type in Flat Earth Clues. Watch these films. They're short. They're to the point. They really make the case. But we're going to make that case for you right now, right here on the broadcast. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Chris. How about you?
Doing great, doing great. My mind is still a bit blown, so I don't even know where to begin with this. But you know what? I did it again. I have a tendency to rant right through the segment, so hold right there. We'll get this started right on the other side. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. So let's put everything to the side here for just a moment, everything that we've known or think we know. And let's get down to the nitty-gritty here. Is the Earth really a globe? And what evidence is contrary to the idea that the Earth is a globe? Maybe we can't point to evidence to show that it's not a globe, but we can definitely point to evidence that shows that it's a globe, or I should say deduce from the evidence and start to tear holes into the evidence that's presented that it is a globe and the sources that they come from. And maybe we can also start piling on a little bit of evidence on top of that as well to point in the other direction. So let's get to this. Mark, let me ask you this. First and foremost, Let's like kind of paint a picture for the audience, because we say flat Earth and everybody goes, oh well, you're just gonna fall right off it, but it's really not structured that way.
No. There's some disputes within the flat Earth community. Some describe it as a plane, but for me, I went initially with the closest thing to it would be reference would be like a roulette table, to where you kind of have a bulge in the middle, if that was the North Pole, and then it kind of dips down, and then when you get up towards the outer edge where Antarctica should be, which we'll talk about later, it goes about up to a height of about 2 miles. So that's why, to answer your thing, that's why the oceans just don't start rolling off the edge, is because there's nowhere to go. It's like a shallow kids pool.
Right. Yeah. So there's basically this big ice barrier around, and we can only speculate as to what's on the other side. Admiral Byrd, though, came back with some really, really interesting ideas.
Indeed. Most people, anyone listen to your show probably has discussed the Hollow Earth, or entertained it at least one point, and that's what he's really known for. He's part of the Hollow Earth legend. But when I was looking at him, it kept referencing back to Antarctica and the South Pole missions, because for most people who don't know, he was America's greatest living explorer. And in 1926, he goes up to the North Pole and, flies over the North Pole, and then you get your Hollow Earth theory. But after 1926, starting in 1928, everything that he did was in the South Pole or Antarctica. From 1928 until his death in 1957, he launched 5 full expeditions, including Operation High Jump, which goes into a whole nother topic, where he led a military group down there. And when he was down there, he found some interesting things. Do you want me to go into the timeline right now, or
yes, let's take us away.
Okay, so for the best I could tell, if you want to go back into like ancient texts and everything, the best I could figure out is that somewhere along the line, the power elite, or what I usually call the authority, and that includes, I'm just lumping up, extremely wealthy people, royalty, and I forgot what the third. Oh, and kings and it doesn't matter. So the point is that they sent him down there starting in 1928, to look for it. I had no doubt in my mind after I was going through stuff that the power elite knew that there was an edge and we were in some sort of enclosed system. Unfortunately, the technology wasn't there to really do anything about it, because, if you were the king of Spain back in the 1500s, what good would it do if someone showed you an ancient map and the world looked like, it was enclosed in some sort of giant Truman Show scenario? So it wasn't until we had metal ships and the internal combustion engine that you could really do anything about it. So they started sending him down to the South Pole in 1928, because there wasn't any technology at the time to go up high enough to test the ceiling of this thing. And he went down there 4 times from 1928 until about 1954. And he didn't find anything. And we knew this because, and you probably already watched this because you said you watched everything, the 1954 television interview on CBS that Admiral Byrd did back in the States, where he talked about Antarctica, and he was just gushing over it. He said, it was such a great place of unlimited resources, an entire mountain range made out of coal, uranium, minerals, oil, and an entire expanse of land in front that he hadn't even flown over yet. And he was their point man. So if he hadn't seen it, then nobody in the world had seen it. And the best I could figure was in 1954, the authority had pretty much given up on finding it. So it's like, okay, well, we'll just make a ton of money on this thing. And, because it's unlimited resources. So we'll get everybody down here and we'll start hyping this thing up. And of course, that's Murphy's Law, because, he was talking during the show. It's like, oh, we got another expedition coming up. It's called Operation Deep Freeze, which started in 1955. And all this you can wiki. This is not secret stuff by any stretch. You can look this up. 1955, he goes down to Operation Deep Freeze and he finds it. They don't say what he found, but I knew exactly what he found, because right after he did that, right after that expedition ended, the world changed. And most people do not understand how nutty this world got. Starting in 1956, it was all, completely under the radar, but there were such huge decisive moves made by the authority on all fronts that there was no doubt in my mind what had happened. So in the first thing, so in 1956, this happens. The Operation Deep Freeze ends, and then immediately Russia and the United States they head off the ice and they go and they start into their rocket program, and and it's that's the beginning of the so-called space race. 1 year into that, they start firing nuclear weapons straight up. They start doing nuclear testing, and these are not small shots. These are big hits, and they're firing them at all altitudes, and they keep firing. And so they start firing those in 1958, right after like the second shot. So in 1958, right after the big gun was fired up there, they formed NASA. And then in 1959, just shortly, I thought it wasn't even a year later, they shut down Antarctica entirely. And that to me was my point of no return, because people don't understand. There was 7 or 8 different nations, including England, Russia, United States, Chile, Argentina, Australia. They were all down there. Everyone's getting ready to harvest this place for resources. And then in 1959, they kick everybody off the ice at the same time. Everybody unilaterally agreed to leave that place, and they locked it down tighter than a drum. And it made absolutely no sense. And they locked it down forever. To this day, the Antarctic Treaty was put in place in 1959. 10 nations signed it. And then every nation that became technologically relevant after that was forced to sign it. Again, it's one of those things that does not happen in everyday, trade, and economic life. And that is, once your country, it's, your country becomes economically viable. Oh, you have to sign this treaty, and you can't go to Antarctica again.
Right, and it is still locked down to this day, and they've got it heavily guarded as well. And if I remember correctly, Admiral Byrd was kicked out of the Antarctica mission and reassigned later on his last tour. So he was even taken out of the equation. Don't go anywhere. One of our dear friends and fellow hosts here at Truth Frequency Radio, Dr. Brooks Agnew, headed the North Pole expedition to find out if the Earth is hollow. And Admiral Byrd came up in the conversations with him over and over and over and over again. But Brooks, just like Admiral Byrd and everybody else who's tried to go to one of the poles, the South Pole being more secretly guarded than the North Pole. The South Pole you can't even take satellite images of. But everybody keeps getting blocked from going to the poles. Why is that? Is it because there's an entrance to the hollow Earth? Is it because the Earth isn't what we've been told it is? Something isn't right here. I think we can all agree that something just simply isn't right, and there is a great deal of secrecy and a veil put over all of our eyes, or an attempt to put over all of our eyes. So we've got to take these puzzle pieces, and we've got to start trying to connect them. So according to Admiral Byrd, he stated that there was a lot of resources, that there was a wealth of everything down there. Then all of a sudden, that's it. Silence, no more. Nobody's allowed to go here, period.
Indeed. It was nutty. And people out there, you got to understand that the oil companies, especially the oil companies nowadays, I mean, the mining companies, sure, but the oil companies have almost unlimited power when it comes to economic resources. I mean, look, they're trying to get into national parks, and they're winning. They can lobby their way into anything, and make no mistake, wars are fought over oil. So if that's the case, why in the world would an entire continent be locked down like this? And again, this isn't like Area 51, where you seal everything off with motion sensors and scary signs and shrouded in mystery. That's just a tiny part of Nevada. This is an entire continent, the size of South America. If you believe what the map says, millions and millions of square miles, and it's not like any other continent. There's no indigenous population. There's no old buildings or animal life or plant life. There's nothing there. And now, of course, it's hidden under another layer, which is an environmental blanket, which is just a facade. Because people say, oh well, it's environmentalists. We have to protect the penguins, and that's a bunch of crap. The penguins are only on the fringe. The interior is just a barren wasteland full of just made of money. So And not only that, but environmentally, we're talking 1959 here. Environmentalism wasn't even a word in 1959. Greenpeace wasn't even founded until 1971. So don't give me that environmentalist crap. It doesn't hold water. So, and not only that, remember, it was unilateral. So it wasn't just America that left. Everybody left at the same time. You really think that America and Russia and Great Britain, I mean, Russia was trying to rebuild after the war. Great Britain was still trying to rebuild after the war. They could have used this stuff. And whatever was out there, and I had no doubt in my mind what it was so jaw-dropping that there wasn't a cover story they could come up with or any sort of perimeter they could do that they could allow anybody in. So their answer was, like with anything, we're just going to blanket coverage this thing, and we are going to seal it off. And which is why I put in one of my clues. It's like, look, if you know people in the petroleum industry, get the word out there. Find out why you can't even petition to get in there and get any resources. It just doesn't make sense. But it made sense to me because as I was going through the timeline, everything just started to click together. Sealing off the outer edge. It was things that I would do because initially, and let's call this what it is. I was trying to crush this thing 9 months ago. I was going to debunk this thing and just stomp it into the ground. And every layer that I got through, I'm just banging my head on the desk saying, "Oh, please don't let it be flat. Please don't let it be flat." And it just got more and more flat as I was doing it. And the timelines just got more and more synced up to where once Antarctica was shut down, then they kept firing the nukes. The nuke program went from 1958 to 1962. Coincidentally, Russia and America stopped the aerial nuke bombardment the exact same day in 1962. They'll say, "Oh, it's a moratorium." That's a bunch of crap. They knew exactly. They were in on it since the beginning. They were both on the ice when it happened. They both shook hands and said, "Okay, we've got to do what we can to hide this thing." And so far, they've done a brilliant job of it. But there were several other things. I don't know if you want me to get into them now. They had to do to see if they could hide, where we are.
Well, that's exactly where I was thinking to go, as a matter of fact. But let me ask you this first: How did this all happen? Because I take a look at the religious texts, for instance, and the religious texts are very clear. The Earth is flat. There's a dome put around us. The firmament, et cetera, et cetera. I'm the first person to dismiss religion, especially in the organized modern form, because I found more deception in things like the Bible and the Quran than not. But where did all these stories come from? We came from a time all of a sudden when everybody agreed that the Earth was flat and there was a dome around it, and that was the firmament that separated the waters from above and the waters from below. And every religion agreed that. And then all of a sudden, the idea of a globe was thrown at us, and we automatically started dismissing all of the other stories. But you have to wonder, why did the whole world think that at one point in time?
Everything was based off of, and I covered it in a couple different places in my clues, where every religion and just about every mythology in all the corners of the world, no play on words there, was they all believed in the flat model, the flat enclosed model. And that was what we did. If you say our history goes pretty much unbroken for about 5,000 years back, about 4,500 years of that was flat, 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 flat. And then about 1514, Copernicus and some others suggested, using some very creative math, that if you had to take a giant leap of faith on their side and then say, okay, if we are spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, and if we are traveling around the sun at 60,000 miles an hour, then the globe model works, and then the solar system works, and then everything else works. The problem was, when they did it, there was no way to prove it. They weren't even close. They were centuries away from proving it. And again, don't give me that boat sailing around the world thing, because we were still burning witches when all that stuff was happening. Give me some hard stuff. Take the picture, basically. And there was no way they could do it. The churches went along with it, though, because there was a real problem there, and that was, if it was starting to take off into the public view, if it was like this modern trendy thing, oh yeah, we're going to go with the globe, the church didn't want to be left behind. So they went with it. It's like, okay, you know what, we'll kind of, there's text that we have that sort of can, be bent into the globe sort of model, but they didn't forget. No, not by any stretch, did they forget the firmament and all the old stuff. They just tucked that away and saved that for later. So
Well, I shudder to think what would happen, as you said in your film, if we did admit that the Earth was flat, and then all of a sudden religions bring this theology, oligarchy on us, and total tyranny, and it will be even worse than anything the New World Order can bring.
There is a potential for that, but I still believe, and I actually, by the way, there's 11 clues now as of yesterday. I still believe that it could be tempered because, there would be a knee-jerk reaction by religion, because this would be a huge shift in spirituality for people. And this is not me doing the whole spiritual, metaphysical, physical thing. What I'm saying is every religion, let's take the big five, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity, all of the big five are looking for a religious artifact of some sort. Whether it be the Holy Grail, it be the Ark of the Covenant, everyone's looking for a religious artifact, something they can grab onto, something real. And if this was discovered, well, it is what it is, and that is it was built. It was built by someone, by a builder, by a creator. Therefore, all religions would immediately grasp onto it equally, and they would all say, this is, proof of our religion. And yes, there would be a fundamental shift. I would hope that it wouldn't be a knee-jerk reaction, and they would condemn science and come out with the pitchforks and torches. But I don't think they would do that, because if it really was real, then you've got this thing hanging over you, whether you can see it or not, which is, well, if the creator's there, then should we be doing the bad things?
Right, exactly. And it's a very, very dangerous idea. On the other side, Mark, I want to challenge the audience, first of all, to think about if you were creating a prison planet, I'm calling that for lack of a better term, what would you do to safeguard the dome, the walls? We'll be right back. When you think about the design of our Earth, or a design that was made in order to keep people away from the walls, what would you do to discourage people from going towards that wall? Mark, can you take us away on that?
You bet. Well, the first thing, the easiest thing to do would be to seal off the outer edge. And if the enclosed model is flat, then the outer edge is Antarctica, and that was sealed off, right off the bat. In fact, the upper edge and the outer edge were sealed off almost at the same time. NASA's formed, which I'll get into in a second, and then the outer edge is sealed off in 1959. But you also have to think about the ceiling. And, if we're talking about, because it's easy for people to understand the Truman Show reference, to seal off the ceiling, you have to militarize space. You have to nationalize it, which is exactly what they did right off the bat. And again, all these moves were so decisive that in my mind, there was no doubt what they were doing. So when you nationalize space, what you're doing is with NASA is you're creating a military space program and it's the only space program in the world, other than the Russians, again, who were completely in on it. But on our side, they could recruit the best and the brightest, the best engineers, the best scientists, the best nerds. And you now have a way of funneling anyone that otherwise would have gone into their own private space program. You have a way of, excuse me, one second. You have your way of limiting private space programs, which worked extremely well. Private space programs couldn't be allowed, and they knew eventually it was going to happen. Like the auto industry, the auto industry wasn't nationalized because there was a lot of money to be had there, but on the space side, eventually you're going to run into people. They're going to make a lot of money, like the guy from Virgin Air, like the guy that started up SpaceX. But that wasn't going to happen for a long, long time. So NASA did their job. So NASA was designed specifically. So the big thing, the first thing they had to do was you nationalize everything, and it recruits everybody into one big fold. So you compartmentalize everything there. Then the next thing you do is you have to take the picture. And that's the most important thing. People don't understand that the picture hadn't been taken of Earth. So it is the ultimate proof of we are on a globe. You have to produce a picture. Doesn't matter if it's real or not. All you have to do is produce it, start handing it out to people, and the globe immediately becomes real. Everything that's been in our classrooms for 20 generations, that becomes real. Unfortunately, the technology wasn't there. So you have to build a rocket program because you couldn't hand out just a picture to people and say, oh yeah, by the way, this is a picture of Earth, because the first question coming back is, well, how'd you take the picture? So you have to build the rocket program and make it feasible enough to where you can at least pretend that you got high enough to take the picture. And that, of course, is another big thing, which is there is literally no pictures from space. The only one that NASA ever released officially was that, the one that everyone knows with that nice little curly crescent cloud below Africa. And it shows, the bottom part of Africa and all of Antarctica. And again, don't think that was a coincidence. Killing two birds with one stone here. You show a picture of the world, and you also show what you're passing off as Antarctica. And that picture was the only single picture was the only one that was released from, depending on which date stamp you look at, from 1969 all the way into the 2000s. And I know this because I went researching it 15 years ago, not for the flat earth movement, for something completely else. And I was just stunned. I was thinking that NASA was useless. It's like, how could you not release more than one picture of the Earth? It doesn't make any sense. It was 2000. There's all sorts of stuff up there from what you're saying. So why isn't anybody taking pictures? So the picture was the most important thing. NASA was the next important thing. And then everything else branched off from that. So, there were certain rules, the Apollo program, the thing that most people don't understand is not just in the moon program, but every external shot on any space mission, there's no panning shot, meaning there's no 180-degree turn. Nobody literally takes the camera and turns around with it. And it would have happened by accident, by now. Easily, and it never ever happened. On the moon, that's the first thing you would have done, and it never ever happened. And they even took it too far, in my opinion, which was clue one, where not only did they control everything in space and not only control the images, but they also controlled Hollywood, which meant that Hollywood literally was not allowed to make a movie of the moon landings, and they never did. And it blew by everybody. Nobody noticed it. 50 years, later, and nobody has made a movie of the moon missions ever. The closest they came was The Right Stuff in 1983, followed by a big gap, 1995 with Apollo 13.
Well, there was Capricorn 1.
Nice. Thank you for throwing that in there. Capricorn 1, the 1979 movie, which was the inside track there was made by a CBS television studio executive who was there when they were broadcasting the 1972 Apollo moon mission stuff, and it was so grainy and awful. He thought it was a terrible production value. It's not that he didn't believe the moon missions. He just said, "Well, heck, if they're doing this, I could make something, and it looked just as good. In fact, I'll make a movie about faking the Mars mission." And that's exactly what it did. Anyone that hasn't checked out the 1979 Capricorn 1, watch that and you will understand why they are not allowed to make moon mission movies. Because if it gets super, super close, if it's a dead on movie, if it's spot on, then you compare it to the real thing. And then you start getting that weird fuzzy thing going in your head. It's like, okay, what am I looking at here? Is, what's real and what's not.
Right.
So, the things they did were just decisive, but everything they did was designed to hide the world, what it really looks like. And they did a pretty good job for the most part, because they just, they were just giant broad strokes, and they did it without much fanfare, and they were hoping the most people wouldn't notice.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was in your film. It could have been. I've watched so many over the course of the last couple of weeks that it might not be in your film. But yeah. I think that you presented a piece of footage that NASA supposedly took on the Apollo moon mission, where they were actually right up on the Earth, but they were using the window and creating a Terminator line on the Earth with a piece of construction paper to fake the idea that they were in deep space.
That wasn't me, but that was one that I had looked at several times, and I think that footage was actually sent to the same guy that did Astronauts Gone Wild, which I included in clue number 11, but I won't go into that right now. But that's a fascinating piece of footage because if anyone hasn't seen it, it's called From the Earth to the Moon. I'm sorry, a funny thing happened on the way from the Earth to the Moon. It's a really long title, but it's a British production. And it is brilliant because what they show is, guys in a capsule, up at a certain altitude, and they're taking pictures of the Earth. But what they're doing is they're using the round window as the capsule, and they're darkening the inside of the capsule, and they're simulating a round picture of the Earth. But even that, now that I've gotten to the whole flat thing, even that, I'm wondering if that leak was deliberate, because even that simulates low Earth orbit. And from everything I've seen, I don't even know if that's possible. I can't even prove that, because everything NASA's done has been so blatant and so horrible over the last years. You've probably seen the ISS space station footage they've been putting out lately.
Oh yeah.
Two words there: permed hair. I can't even believe they're releasing some of this stuff.
Well, I've got two more words: green screen.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Well, yeah, and what it makes you. And here's the thing: when I got into this, because years ago I was looking into the Apollo stuff. I know just about all the conspiracies, forwards and backwards. But the Apollo missions bugged me because I couldn't figure out for the life of me a good motivation for it. So everyone's arguing. It's like, oh, did they fake it or did they not fake it? No, that's not the question you should be asking. The question is, why would they fake it? And every answer I came up with wasn't good enough, which was, well, okay, maybe, the whole national glory thing, USA, go, rah, rah. But it wasn't good enough. And then when I looked at the enclosed system model, that's when it made sense, because it changed the framing of the question. It wasn't that they wanted to fake the space program. They had to fake the space program. If they do not fake the space program, they're in trouble, because sooner or later the private sector is going to get involved, and you're going to get sponsors, and someone's going to get up there and crash, and it's going to be awful, and you're going to have to answer a whole lot of questions. So it was out of absolute desperation. It was a complete necessity, which is why we got to go, don't we?
We are just about at the end of the hour. However, we've got hour number 3 coming up, ladies and gentlemen. Mark, please give people the websites real quick.
There's no, just go to YouTube, or you can just Google Flat Earth Clues, either one.
Okay, excellent. Yep. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. Hour number 3 coming up, virtually commercial free. We've got a break at the bottom of the hour, but this is when we can really get into the nitty gritty. So don't go anywhere. We've only just begun. Let's jump right back into it. Hour number 3 right here on Truth Frequency. We may do a little bit of overtime if Mark has the availability, because I don't think that we're going to be able to get through all of the information in this hour, but I do want to try to get it through as much as possible. And there's a lot of questions coming out of the chat room. Cherie has some questions as well, and I think that we can really scratch the surface at the very least, if not break the whole barrier of this whole idea of what is our Earth? Is it really what we've been told that it is? And if it's not what we've been told that it is, why have they gone to such lengths to lie to us? Now, I do want to ask all of the naysayers in the chat room and who are listening to the broadcast, because I'm sure that the naysayers in the chat room represent a small percentage of the actual naysayers that are out there. But why do you believe that the Earth is what you've been told that it is? Somebody just posted a minute ago and said, I can believe that the moon landing was fake, but I can't believe that the Earth is flat and it's not a globe. Well, why do you believe that the Earth is a globe? The same people who faked the moon landing are the ones telling you that it's a globe. So you're taking the words of proven liars and you're basing your whole idea of reality on the words of liars. Instead, what I propose is do what I did, which is completely forget everything that you've been told, start from scratch and start building the evidence from there and see where it leads you.
Well, and I had some questions about what you said earlier when you talked about how you don't even think that the astronauts can get that far up to do a hoax like that in the first place. I was in the East Texas area when Columbia exploded over us, and it shook my windows. It woke me up, and it frightened me. Actually, I thought somebody was dropping a bomb on us or something, but no, it was the Columbia breaking up. What do you think these accidents are? Are they hitting some kind of barrier, or does NASA at the highest levels know that they're going to hit the barrier and let them go anyway? And that's why we see Challenger and Columbia exploding the way they do?
There you go. You have to do, and by the way, I'd like to preface this because, we hadn't really addressed the fact that we're talking about this. now is amazing, because even a couple of years ago, I would have said this is ludicrous. This is ridiculous. But the fact that we're talking about this is good. And I'll address your thing, Shri, here in 1 second. But to the naysayers, you've got to understand something. Everyone is conditioned because the globe has been in your classroom just sitting there for years and years and years. You're equating it with stuff you already know. Water is wet, fire burns, gravity is real. You can test these in your own house. But with the globe, you're matching that up with these things, and you can't explain it. I know in your head you're going, we know it because we know it. But then I throw back the question at you. It's like, okay, tell me how you know it's a globe without using the word NASA. Tell me how you do it, because everyone's going to come back to it and say, well, they got the picture. They've got the picture. It's like, because they would never lie to you. A military organization would never lie to you about anything. Anyway, I will segue that into what you just asked, Shri, which is NASA also has to do stuff on a regular basis to reinforce the globe model. And people, you got to understand, like in the news, like if you look on any internet, the majors, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, you've got business, you've got weather, and for whatever reason, you've got a space section on the page. And every month, NASA releases something, and they're doing that to reinforce the model that you're in a globe. You're in a globe. So if it doesn't matter if it's a disaster, if something cracks up on in the atmosphere and they let you see it, it's because they're coming back from space. If you see a face on Mars, it's reinforcing that you're on a globe, because all your focus is on the Mars the face on Mars. But as soon as you look at the face on Mars, say, that's interesting, by default you're saying, I'm on a globe thinking about a thing on Mars. Same with the thing on Saturn. Anything that NASA releases, the whole purpose of it is to reinforce the globe. Nonstop. That is their job. That's the whole reason they were founded in 1958. Don't think it was a coincidence that after they ran into whatever they ran into out in the Antarctic in 1956, and as soon as they fired up the rockets, as soon as they figured out they couldn't break through it, NASA was formed, and the whole goal was to keep what the world looked like secret.
It really is a wheel within a wheel within a wheel. I mean, think about this, because people who listen to this broadcast and other broadcasts, a similar broadcast, they can take the leap, as I said, that the moon landing was hoax. They can even say that Nibiru is coming to cause a pole shift, and the only way that you can see it is from a telescope in the South Pole, and that's reiterating the globe over and over and over in that conspiracy theory there, and people can go along with that. But to go a step further and say, everything that we've been told by these people is a complete lie, you just can't handle it.
It's not that it's a complete lie. You got to remember, most of their work was done for them. They were just they were keeping something hidden that was already hidden. So for them, it was an easier decision. It's not like they had to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. They, all their decisions though were very, very broad, and again, very decisive and all right in a row. We fire, we develop a rocket program, we start firing nukes, we form NASA, we seal off the outside, and again, there's 3 rules here, and I talk about it in the clues. There's 3 rules. If the model is flat, and believe me, I did not want it to be flat. I was like any of people out there. It's like, no, it's a globe. You're crazy. I wanted it to be a globe. I was happy with the globe. I like the globe. But the more I dug into it, it just got flatter and flatter, and to the point where I was having a hard time even looking at the globe. But there are 3 rules you cannot break that would be in a flat model. It's like, okay, if you're going to hide a flat model, there's 3 things you cannot break. The first one is you can't have any realistic, you can't have a panning shot from the space program in the exterior, which is true. 2, you cannot have multiple shots. You have to have as few shots as possible of the Earth from space, which is also true. But the big one, the big one is the map is wrong. So if the map's wrong, if you're using a flat map, and you guys can look it up online on Google, it's called the azimuthal equidistant, which is used, by the way, by the USGS, and that's the United States Geologic Survey. And it's also on the flag of the United Nations, and it's also the Flat Earth Society's map. Why are they all the same? But if that map is real, then the flights are wrong. And the flights are wrong in the southern hemisphere only, and it does some really weird things to the flights, and people don't understand it because up in America it's not so pronounced, so they don't have to fake it as badly. But if you're in the southern hemisphere flying from, say, Australia to South America, those points are on completely opposite ends of a flat circular map, and there's no shortcut, so you have to find a way of hiding that. And they've done it over the last 40 years. And once the GPS system was invented, and trust me when I say the GPS system was invented, not necessarily to track you on your phones, that came on later. It was to also hide what the map looked like, because the GPS was designed by the United States military, Department of Defense, and it's there to steer people away from certain parts of the map. Because the GPS when you're on GPS, it tells you what they want you to see. So, for example, do you want me to get into the flights in the Southern Hemisphere?
You're reading my mind. Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
So the flights in the Southern Hemisphere, I initially had looked at it, and I didn't come up with this on my own. There was a guy from Germany. He goes, he says, look what's going on there. If you fly from anywhere in Australia, that includes New Zealand, to anywhere in South America, they're bouncing you all over the place. You can't find any nonstops. And it's not that you can't find any nonstops. They're sending you in directions you would never go. The equivalent of like if you were heading from Dallas, Texas to New York, but they bounce you off Seattle for some reason, the opposite direction, or really, really long distances. So I was going, okay, maybe there's something to it. So I tried, for a couple of days, just hammering on this. And it's true. 95% of the flights in the Southern Hemisphere are connections, and they're really horrible connections. And so I did that in Clue 7. I called it the long haul and really talked about it. I said, look, there's like the occasional nonstop flights, but they're really rare. But people latched onto it. They didn't understand. And people in the Southern Hemisphere, they don't understand how easy it is to get nonstops, where we live. But in the Southern Hemisphere, it's almost impossible. So there was these weird nonstop flights, and they were, the big one, the one that everyone keeps sending me. It's like, oh, you got to check out the Santiago, Chile to Auckland, New Zealand one. And it's a nonstop. I'm going, all right, fine. So I pulled up something called planefinder.net, and there's, like it got to be half a dozen systems out there, but they're all software, live real-time tracking systems that track the flights. And they show every commercial flight in the world in real time. And I was staring at it for a while because I wanted to see one of these nonstops go across the ocean, because if you're going, from Australia to South America, you have to cross the South Pacific Ocean. It's a straight shot, 7,400 miles. It's easy. It should be about 12 hours. And so I'm staring and I'm staring. I've got this thing up. I'm opening and closing it to make sure, even though it refreshes automatically. And over the period of a week, I noticed nothing was down there. Nothing was crossing the South Pacific Ocean or the Indian Ocean or even the South Atlantic Ocean. And at least on the GPS system, and I couldn't figure out why. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me. It's like, I get it. I see what's happening here. So I watched a plane leave out of Buenos Aires heading towards Johannesburg, which isn't even a part of the flat Earth equation. It gets about 150, 200 miles offshore and just disappears off of GPS entirely. It drops off the map. And I watched plane after plane just vanish and vanish and vanish again. And that's when it hit me. I was going, that's so sneaky. What they were doing was to hide the map, what it really looks like, you have to hide the route, because on a flat map, Australia to South America, if you're going over the ocean, is way longer than 7,400 miles. So you have to cut corners, but you can't cut corners and show people how you did it. So you blink out every flight below the equator. So if it's over land, that's fine. But if it goes over the ocean, you make sure it disappears entirely, and you make sure it is not tracked, and that's what happens. And so I put that in Clue 9, called The Magic Show, and show, gave people examples, showed them exactly what to look for, and it was staggering to me, because what they did was they did a blanket coverage, meaning they couldn't just make the nonstops disappear because that would raise too many eyebrows. So what they did was they made all the flights disappear. And people say, well, that's how GPS works. I was like, no, because if you look in the Southern Hemisphere, people are flying over the North Atlantic and the North Pacific all day long, and nothing changes there. And again, it's the reason why it just rang true with me is that's what I would have done. it's the lowest maintenance of all the options. So if you kill all the flights in the southern hemisphere, you don't have to necessarily worry about anything. You don't have to write any special software or any special tracking programs, and most people just won't look down there. And they got lucky, because if America was where Australia is now, if the United States was down there, there would be so much travel, people would figure that out. But down there, there's just enough, less travel that people just don't pick up on it. But it's amazing. It's staggering to see.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you are going from New York to Seattle and the
Yep.
Earth is moving from west to east,
Yep.
then you would get there in about an hour if you were flying in that direction. Now, going the other way, you would have to be flying against the turn of the Earth or towards the turn of the Earth as well. So it will take you longer, but the flights are all the same.
Yeah.
And then if the Earth is actually spinning, then the best way to get from New York to Seattle, for instance, is just to take a balloon and just hover it up in the air.
Yeah. The old spinning Earth argument, which I really didn't cover in my clues, but I'll go with you on this, and that is, yeah, for those of you who don't know how the Earth works, if it's a globe, it's spinning at 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. Now up in North America, you'd be pushing, I don't know, 700 miles an hour, 800. You'd have to look that up. But the point is, if you've got a flight going from, let's say, New York to LA and another one going from LA to New York, if one plane is going with the spin and the other is going against the spin, then shouldn't there be a discrepancy in the time? And we're going to take the jet stream out of this, because the jet stream, is 100 plus miles an hour of wind, and you get that wind resistance thing. But it shouldn't be, if you're flying at a lower altitude, it shouldn't be the same time, because you say, okay, if one's going with the spin, then gravity, people say, well, gravity's locking it down, and that's fine. But okay, if you're going against it, does gravity also lock it down? Because then it's you can't have it both ways. But it's one of those arguments where people don't talk about. And the other one, which kind of dovetails into that, is the North Pole equator weight argument, which I think is also valid, which is if you take 100-pound weight and you put it at the North Pole, technically, yeah, if the equator is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, the North Pole is spinning at 0 miles an hour. So if you're on a merry-go-round, the equator should be trying to throw you off. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to start slinging people into space. Of course not. But it should, 1,000 miles an hour is a lot of speed. There should be a weight difference. So if you take that 100-pound weight on the North Pole and take it down to the equator, it should weigh a little bit less. It should. And people say, well, it wouldn't be much. It's like, fine, we've got pretty precision, instruments now. If it was 2 or 3 ounces, it should be measurable,
Right.
if that's the case. And nobody does that test. There's,
I think the one thing that did it for me, and I don't know if this is in your film or if it's in another film, but the UN flag.
ugh.
I mean, they're just telling you right there, a flag that's supposed to represent the entire world is using the flat Earth model.
Yeah. It is the UN flag is identical to the USGS map. It is identical to the flat Earth map. Only one of those, though, is considered crazy. The other two are considered completely legitimate. The UN flag doesn't have Antarctica on it. It has all the other continents, but there's no ring like in the azimuthal map. There's no ring of Antarctica on the outside. Now, people say, well, it's implied. Maybe it's in the outer ring. Personally, for me, I think it was the wreaths on the outside. I think it was their subtle little jab that, oh, yeah, by the way, there's a barrier on the outside, but we're going to turn it into wreaths. But they don't talk about it anywhere on their website. You will not find out. And they put that map into effect in the 40s, which was interesting. But that doesn't really surprise me because the azimuthal map, the one that the USGS uses, that map's 1,000 years old. And that was one of the first things I noticed about this whole thing was if you go, to map projections in Wiki, you'll scroll down and you'll see this azimuthal equidistant map. And when you see who it's proposed by and when, it was proposed literally in 1000 AD by a Persian scientist named Al-Biruni, who is like, why is the United States using a 1,000-year-old map by a Persian scientist? And from 1,000 years ago when we thought the Earth was flat. Why are they using this map as their representation of the world? Why is it in their catalog? And when you look this guy up, you're thinking, okay, maybe it's a fluke, maybe it's an error. And then, you notice that little thing where NASA knew full well who this guy was and actually named a moon crater after him. And that was their little jab. They, at the highest levels, absolutely they know what's going on. And it's extensive, but again,
let me, before we get too far ahead,
go ahead.
Let me just restate what you just said for the audience and pay attention, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, the UN map is a model of the flat Earth. Second, the USGS uses a map that was created 1,000 years ago when everybody believed that the Earth was flat. They still use that to this day, and it is the most accurate map that we have. Think about that. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. You. That's perfect. I know I get jazzed up when I'm thinking about this because the layers that have been put in to hide it were so extensive and so complete that they really left nothing to chance. There was a few loose things they left out there, like, the azimuthal map. I don't know who left that in Wiki. They probably shouldn't have done it. I don't think they should have named a moon crater after Al Biruni. But everything else has been really rock solid. I'll give you another example. We'll jump back to the space program. Every space program, doesn't matter which nation it is, everybody goes through NASA. Everybody knows this. NASA controls the skies entirely, which was their entire purpose. And there was a program a few years back, if anyone wants to look it up, called JAXA, JAXA, which was the Japanese moon probe mission. And the whole point of that was to send a probe around the moon. And their initial mission was they were going to try to take pictures of the American equipment that was supposedly still there and come back. And I remember years ago, it wasn't that long ago. It was 5-6 years ago, something like that. That I remember watching it, and the major news people, it was a little blurb in the science section, and then nobody talked about it again. And I couldn't figure out why. And then some of the Japanese, people started releasing the videos, because I think they showed some of the stuff live in Japan. Some of the videos that they took, because they took HD cameras with them as they were coming back, as the probe was supposedly coming back from the moon. And then I saw why it wasn't really made such a big deal in America, because the images just weren't that great. And you're thinking, these are HD cameras and they're coming back. And they had the perfect opportunity. There it was, coming over the moon's surface, and you'll see it. If you look up on YouTube, it's called JAXA Earthrise, and there's the Earth coming up. And like all the fake Earth images, if they're going to fake it, it's going to be a lot of cloud cover. You have no idea where the continents are, and it's going to be at a distance. Even if you zoom in, you're not going to see anything. And you're thinking, oh, well, the probe's going to come back, and you're going to get a great shot, of zooming in on the Earth as you're coming back from the moon. That footage doesn't exist. It is not out there, and it's just they do not take chances. There's rules, again, they cannot break, because it's too hard to do it. Show me decent images where the stars are in the right alignment. The moon mission, I don't want to beat on that too much, but that the blanket coverage is in effect there, and that was people forget that there's no stars in any of the Apollo footage or still pictures or moving pictures. There's no stars. And that's because at the time it was too hard to try to project where the constellations were, because everything's date stamped. So if the constellation of Orion is over this guy's shoulder on this time of the day, some nerd's going to figure it out years and years later. The internet hive mind is very, very good at spotting just about everything. If there's a movie out there, just in cinema, and if they'll go frame by frame. If a coffee cup moves from one place, side of the room to the other, they will find it.
We were just watching the Star Wars one just the day before yesterday, and they were like, "Look, you can see that this coffee cup is turned in a different direction."
Oh yeah, I caught one 2 days ago, and these mistakes don't get better with Interstellar, which was just released, on DVD. Interstellar, I was watching the thing, and Matthew McConaughey was going to give his watch to his daughter, and his watch, it was facing the camera, and it said 3:00. And as he's giving the watch to his daughter, he's showing it to her, and it's now 8:20. And, it's these little things. That's the clocks are the easiest ones to grab. But the point is that the internet hive mind misses nothing. So NASA, I know some of you guys are listening out there. Just stop it. Just stop. Just don't release anything anymore, because it's just embarrassing, some of the stuff you're putting out, because someone is going to find it. You may have some of the smarter guys, but the numbers have you. There's some guy in the middle of Missouri, and 3 o'clock in the morning is going, oh, hey, look what I just found. And he's going to post it, and you're going to get caught. So,
Mark, let me ask you about some of the other objects out there, and suppose it's space, the sun,
sure.
the moon, all of that. People in the chat room and some of the naysayers, and I know some of these people, they come to the show on a regular basis. They contribute greatly. They're not here trolling. They're asking legitimate questions.
That's fine.
One person is saying that he's an astronomer or amateur astronomer. He looks at the sky all the time. He looks at the sun. He looks at the moon. He looks at all the different stars out there. Why are they all round?
Got it. And I'll be fair to him. Unfortunately, if he's an astronomer, there's literally nothing I can say. I've quoted this in other interviews, which is, look, as an astronomer, it is absolutely your job. The globe is your Bible, and I understand that. So no offense to you, but there's literally nothing I can say to you. As far as everything being round, from my standpoint, and this is going to get a little wild, but from my standpoint, you got to remember, this has only been hidden artificially for the last 50 years. Before that, I believe that whoever built this structure, the entire intention was to hide it from everybody. So yeah, the stars are round, the planets are round, the sun's round, the moon's round. But it was meant to be that way because eventually the globe model was going to be accepted by the population. Not forever, but that's the big thing here. So eventually technology says that eventually if the world isn't round, eventually people are going to keep looking for the disk, if you get what I'm meaning. So the people are going to start looking for the fence. So a globe model has to be introduced eventually, not necessarily by Copernicus, but whoever built it. Because they want people to act as naturally as they can for as long as they can. And then, that all changed in 1956 when it was, hidden artificially.
Well, what I find odd is the sun and the moon, for instance. I mean, just today we had a big solar eclipse. Yeah. And the sun and the moon, the sun is supposedly as the size of a basketball compared to our Earth, which is the size of a marble, and the moon being even smaller than that. Yet they're placed in this perfect distance to where when one crosses the other, well, first of all, they both look about the same size in the sky at times, but then they can cross each other and perfectly cover each other up because they're so perfectly well placed out there. Yet the size is so different.
Yeah, the design features do seem to be a bit coincidental, don't they? And and don't forget that the moon, we only see exactly one side of the moon. That the rotation, we never see the other side. That bugged me more than the size thing. But yeah, how the eclipse matches up just perfectly when the moon goes over the sun. In my model, and again, there's some dispute in the flat Earth world. It comes down to that. I hate to use it, but do you remember Life of Brian, the Monty Python movie?
Oh yeah.
Okay, the shoe joke where Brian drops his shoe, and it's really like a 3-minute description of how religions break down. All the different interpretations of the shoe. When I designed this model, when I was breaking it down and trying to figure out everything, for me, since everything was designed so efficiently and so compactly, I looked at the stars and the sun and the moon, and I realized that they did not have to be light years away to pull this off. No chance. I went with the Truman Show model, and that was, if you can fake it, that's what you go with. If 99.9% of the population or whatever civilization's down here is going to buy a projection, a very pretty projection. Okay, I'm not, people say, oh, you're trying to discredit astrology. No, not at all. Not at all. For me, the stars are a very beautiful image / clock, because that's really what they are. And if you want to build an entire predictive system on that, go for it. Go nuts. You don't have to have them light years away to make them relevant, because they're still there. We can go out now and we can see them. But at the same time, they don't have to be physically, you don't, if you're going to go small, if you're going to build something this small and this efficient and compact, you don't have to build a giant solar system around it. You don't have to do it. Because if people believe that there's a giant solar system, then that's all you care about. But that's, as far as the stars and the planets go, yes, for me, it was a giant projection system of some sort. And again, no offense to anyone out there that if your flat model incorporates real stars and real planets, fantastic, great. It doesn't change the fact that it's flat. However, the sun and the moon, for me, also fit in that same thing, and that was, I think they're three-dimensional objects, and I think they are way closer than we think they are. The sun 92 million miles away doesn't have to be. The sun could be a couple 100 miles away, and still, have a huge projection system and give off a lot of light and heat. The moon, whole nother thing. For those that you haven't looked, can I mention somebody on another YouTube thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There was a guy that filmed. He's not even a flat earther, and people go, "Why are you referencing him? He's not a flat earther." And I'm going, because he's seen stuff from a non-flat Earth point of view, and his model still works, at least in mine. And that is, there was a guy called Crow 777 on YouTube. All he did was take really good high-end HD video of the moon, and really, really close up stuff. And he ran into some resolution wave, like a refresh rate that was going through the moon in slow motion.
Our first guest was talking to me about that off air just earlier. I haven't been able to find it. What was that YouTube?
It's CRROW 777.
Okay. Good.
And or you could just look up lunar wave. And again, he wasn't a believer, by a stretch. He was like thinking, my camera's broken. I just spent thousands and thousands of dollars on this thing, because he was shooting through a telescope. And it wasn't working for him. But he realized after looking at it that the wave was real. The point is that it looked like the moon was being projected upon by something. It was a three-dimensional object, solid enough, but there seemed to be something layered over the top of it, which again would make sense. But it kind of lent into that, maybe this is the time to talk about flat Earth stuff, because it seems that our technology is catching up with some of the technology that's being used in this structure. Because, think about it from a refresh rate. Let's say our cameras are a couple of milliseconds behind in refresh to the device that we're filming. That would explain the vertical hold band that's going through it. But for me, yeah, the sun and the moon, three-dimensional objects, going in a big arcing circle around the azimuthal map, and it worked really well. So by the time I was done, you had Antarctica stretched around the outside, the oceans, the southern hemisphere oceans stretched around the outside, some sort of, again, Truman Show enclosure starting, out at the outer edge, going, I don't know, 100 miles, 200 miles, maybe. You don't even have to have it that high. And it looks solid enough that we're not going through it. And people say, well, you could go through it. I was going, well, no, because if NASA could go through it, they would have gone through it by now. It's not a question. They don't want to fake this stuff. I can't beat on this enough. They don't want to fake the space program. They have to fake it. They have no choice. And they're in a tough spot right now, because the technology that we're using today right now is working against them.
It's the Truman Show, ladies and gentlemen, and every man and every woman is a star. Oh, Cherie, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to expand on that. I think that not only are you correct about the fact that it's a projection, because I think we're overthinking this. I think that it's all projection, and we're all basically living in a matrix, and sure, we're the stars of some weird reality show. So I will expand on that and say that I'm an astrologer. I'm an amateur astrologer, and
she's really good.
Yeah,
really good.
Pretty good. And I have deduced through psychedelic experiences mixed within all of this that it not only is it a projection, it's worse than that. The projection has an electromagnetic field to it, so that whenever certain things are happening with that projection system, it's putting certain things into your brain and making you act a certain way, or lose your temper, or, break up with somebody, or fire someone, or, do something that you wouldn't normally do. And that's part of the reason why we are still muddling through all of these problems that we've been dealing with for thousands of years.
Interesting. I like it. I like it. And I hope I didn't offend you in any way when I mentioned the astrology thing.
Oh, no, not at all. No, no. I think that they go together.
Well,
yeah.
You know, when she started doing astrology and doing people's birth charts, she did mine, and the attributes in the birth chart were so strikingly close to what I am, my personality, past experiences and things like that, that I said, okay, this is more than a coincidence here. Then she started doing other people's birth charts, and these things are so revealing to the person that we've had people literally stop talking to us because we've revealed so much about them that they've kept secret. And of course, I mean, not publicly or anything, but when we hand them the birth chart, they read it and go, oh my God, what the heck is this? So there's something to this for sure. And I've theorized, what if the stars are more like the ones and zeros in a computer, that you can actually see the circuits moving together rather than I don't know. It's hard to put into words, but there's definitely something to it. But that doesn't counter any idea that we're living in a matrix. I think it just goes to further the idea that we're living in a matrix.
Well, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but somebody in the chat, Freeman, also said the whole planet is ascending. No physical lower vibration shall pass through. I think that we are entering a time that it's kind of like being able to see how the magician is doing a magic trick, and then you don't fall for it anymore. And so we're starting to see through the lies, not only how we see the world and the universe around us, but how we see each other, how we see ourselves. It's all crumbling down. The illusions are crumbling.
Well, even David Icke is talking about the moon matrix. We're being controlled by the moon. There's something going on with the moon. And then now people are filming the moon. It seems like a projection. People are going, oh, I think the sky's an LED screen. What did they do with the real sky? I mean, it's all coming to the forefront right now, the consciousness.
Right.
I agree. Is it possible? Because, you know, people don't understand here that I was working out for like 9 months, but the videos that we're talking about right now, I've only had up a month, and the response has been so amazingly positive. No debunkers, you know, almost no hate mail to speak of. The fact that we're talking about this now is, I think, extremely relevant, because it's a subject that honestly I'm still amazed that we're even discussing it. And is it possible that, we're talking about it because something's changing along these lines? You know, is it something, you know, that, enough people are noticing it to where, you know, who or whatever built this place, you know, is going to finally, you know, show up.
Well,
you know,
the ants, the ants are going, hey, wait a minute, we're in an ant farm. We're not in a real thing. You know, we were talking about the idea of what is this? Are we a planet floating in space, a flat planet? Yeah. I tend to agree with you. I don't think that we are. There was the Resident Evil installment. I don't remember which one, but at the very beginning of the movie, she wakes up, she thinks she's in New York, and there's a big zombie attack, and then she's in China, then she's in several other places, and it turns out that she's in a warehouse somewhere, and all these environments have been replicated. I think if we are on a flat plane in a dome, then we're essentially like in a warehouse somewhere, or there's an even bigger environment that we're inside of, and it's not outer space.
Exactly. For me, that's exactly well put, which is for something like this, especially from a design standpoint, because I, you know, came from the computer game design world. I know how things lay out. And for me, the first thing, you know, obviously is we are not the first civilization inside the structure. You know, how many ocean cities do you have to find before you realize that? And that would make sense because, we're not the first people to rent this apartment by any stretch. But if you're going to build one, you're going to build more. Because why would you just build one? You know, there's more things, you know, you can do more. If you're going to build one, you're going to build 10, or you're going to build 100. And I don't want to expand it out too far because people will get weird. But for me, with this, where we're sitting in is an enclosed structure, and then there's more flatness, and there's a much bigger room outside of this. And some people said, well, maybe we're the tip of a planet. And it's like, look, get out of that planet vision you've got right now, because it doesn't have to be round. It can be any shape it wants. It could be a giant cube for all we know. But I definitely don't think, you know, if you get outside of the thing, there's just open space. I don't think that at all. I firmly believe, no play on words there, that we are part of a much bigger mechanism.
We're essentially inside cats, and we're afraid of the outside, and we think this is all that exists. And we get a peek of the outside and go, no, 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 I don't want to go out there. But some of us are going, oh, I want to see what's out there. I want to go get the birds.
Yeah. And for me, yeah, I think it was going to be a natural process where, the technology, for the first thousands of years, nobody even bothered looking for the fence because there's so much little nudges of negative reinforcement. Again, this design, if you look at it from the top down point of view using that azimuthal map, it's a brilliant design. And that is, you've got most of the continents clustered in the center, big oceans around, saltwater oceans, by the way. Don't think that was a mistake. Add 3% salt solution to the oceans and it reduces your ocean exploration by 95% because you can't drink what you're sailing on. And then you decrease the temperature as you're going out towards the edge to the point where, when it hits about 15 degrees, salt water starts freezing. And that keeps them from going out any further. And then if they actually made it to the outer barrier, there's nothing to eat. There's no animals to kill unless you eat penguins. And that only works for a little while. And then you've got no plant life. And then you've got, hundreds of miles of just barren, frozen wasteland. And that'll stop just about everybody except, unless you're a really good explorer that's got orders and a ton of money. And then the upper part, that's also a natural barrier. Again, it's these little negative reinforcements. So if you go up high enough, even on mountains, you're going to get altitude sickness. You reduce the oxygen levels as you go up higher, and you also reduce the temperatures.
We used to live in Woodland Park at 8,500 feet, and it sucked. Mm-hmm. It was gorgeous, but man, just the altitude was you couldn't take it. You couldn't live like that.
Exactly. But those little negative reinforcements, what they do is they give you that illusion of choice. And I know I'm stealing a Matrix line here, but it's the illusion of choice. And that is, if you're going in a boat and it gets too cold, you're going to make your own conscious decision to turn back. And if you don't turn back, you see the icebergs. Then maybe you make your own decision to turn back, and it just goes on from there. So people don't know. Up until that point, they didn't even know there was a fence because they thought, well, okay, I'm just not going to go there anyway. And then once it became a globe model, that was the most ingenious thing of it all, because then you're just telling people basically that there's no fence at all, and you can run around the globe all you want, and you're never going to find anything because you're stuck here. And I thought that was a natural process that was supposed to end probably in the 1950s. They could have changed things, made a different, had a different explorer. It could have delayed it a little while. But I think that's when we were initially supposed to find out, when the shift was supposed to happen. And I think it was delayed artificially. And that's where we are now, 50 years later.
One of the things that I faced when I started walking down this road, and I'm sure a lot of people are facing this as well, is the idea that a lot of the things that you've come to understand that are conspiratorial, for instance, extraterrestrials, which we talked about in the first hour with Chris Cowan and a couple of other, William Whitecrow was on with us. We talked about extraterrestrials and life on other planets. All that all of a sudden goes out the window if we're sitting in a dome somewhere. So I don't know, how do extraterrestrials, UFOs, things like that play into a flat Earth model? If you've even theorized about that.
No, I had to. I got those questions in the first couple of days I released the videos. One, yeah, you're absolutely right. It does make the universe a whole lot smaller, but it also makes it easier. So yeah, you don't have to worry about Planet X and other weird things that are happening outside. But when it comes to aliens, that's where it gets really strange. And I'll throw something out that I really haven't thrown in other interviews, which was I about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, I watched some guy, and he was going, it was at the end of this little interview that I was watching, he was doing a UFO thing. He goes, he just threw it in at the end. He said, you want to see something interesting? He goes, grab some night vision and go outside sometime and look up in the sky and, see what's up there. And so I said, well, I'll take that bet. So I went out and I bought some, you can buy them off Amazon. Most of them are made in Russia anyway, which is weird. Some night vision binoculars. I bought some night vision binoculars. There's a plug for Night Owl out there. And I went out and I started looking at the skies. And what I realized was, yeah, most people don't understand that UFOs are just like cars, in that cars don't need their headlights on. They work just fine without them. We drive around in the daytime without headlights all the time. And with UFOs, that's exactly the case. The skies are crawling, at least where I'm in Colorado, the skies are crawling with things up here. And from a flat Earth model, as I was looking at them, I eventually just stopped going, because once I got into the flat model, I realized that if all these things that were up there, because they weren't satellites, I guarantee it, they were, they fit into the model better because they seem to be more on the maintenance side. They were obviously interacting with us, in certain areas, mostly remote, not landing in populated areas, like the argument that everyone talks about. Why hasn't a UFO ever landed on the White House lawn? But for me, they represented either superintendents, maintenance, or previous versions of us that are not allowed, obviously, via protocol, because they would have interacted by now, they're just coexisting with us. Heck, they could be in the hollow part of this. They could be living down here with us and have to keep hidden because they don't want to know. They don't want people to, start digging around and see if they can find them.
So they could basically be the janitors of the people that built the Matrix in the first place.
Right.
Absolutely, they could.
Wow.
Absolutely could.
Chris actually had a very deep ayahuasca experience that included that kind of scenario where he encountered these beings that told him. Do you want to?
It's a long story.
It's a long story.
But I work with plants and ayahuasca. I don't know if you're familiar with any of that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Are you? Okay,
yeah,
excellent. There were these three beings that I encountered, and they were the creator, not the creators. I asked them, "Did you create this?" And they said, "No, we just maintain it." And it was a very, very in-depth experience, and I talked about it in excess on the show.
By the way, doesn't that remind you of the that contact thing? Which I also love that concept where Jodie Foster, when she gets to wherever she's going, she goes, "Did you build this?" And he goes, "We didn't build it. We don't know who did." One of those things where this could be a leftover dome from somewhere, and they were told, again, I think they're under specific instructions, whoever's flying around up there, that they were told, all right, you keep the maintenance going until we get back. And but you do not land. You do not, not to steal the prime directive argument, but you do not deal with these people on a regular basis, because you'll get in huge trouble. And so far, I think that's the case.
Well, I've also speculated, and I don't know if you've gone down this route, about secret societies, Freemasons, for instance. You've got the square and the compass. What is the square and the compass? Is that the dome that's around us?
No.
The grand architect, who is he? Is he the one that built this?
The Masons have, and I could pull up the tracing boards and all the thing. The Masons were one of those societies that I have no doubt knew what this place looked like. Everything that's in there screamed the same thing. The square and the compass were really represent. Yeah, there's all sorts of different meanings, but overall, it meant, from a flat model, it meant that they were the most precision instruments of their day, and so everything that they reinforced was it was built. It was built. The checkered floor, the three pillars that hold up the sky, everything the Masons did, and please, look into the tracing boards, because they're very, very intriguing, said the same thing, and that was, there's a structure involved here. The grand architect, the fact that they used that word, it was, what do architects do? They design and build things, and so I have no doubt they knew, and they kept the secret for a long time. But also, because things get lost from generation to generation, they, what they couldn't do anything. They couldn't really take advantage of it, because they couldn't even see it. For even them, I think it had passed into legend, where nobody knew for sure, and again, until 1956. And then that's when everyone freaked out, because oh my God, it's actually real. And, then we have to actually do something.
One thing that I don't know if you've picked up on or not is the Illuminati card game, card number 134.
Oh, the Flat Earth Society? Yeah.
People laugh, but the Flat Earthers know something. For their actions, you may roll 2 dice.
Yeah, isn't that a great card? And they didn't have to put that in there. This was people. It's flat Earth has been not just the runt of the litter; it has been the worst thing to look at. Even even you, even me, coming from conspiracy backgrounds, people would bring up flat Earth, and you just go, oh. Let's talk about lizard people, and anything could be believed over flat Earth,
right?
And now, and which kills me, because now that I look at it, it's anyone's listening. It's like, look, give it 60 seconds, watch any little bits of the flat, the clues, or other people's video. Other people are doing good things out there, and you look at it, and then you'll start to think, why didn't I look at this earlier? Because it's the biggest one, and there's so many things that dovetail into it. In fact, there's so few other things that I when I was designing this, I realized that things worked better in a flat model than they did in a globe model when it came to just about everything, including conspiracies. It just made more sense as I was going into it, to the point where it's like now I can't even look at a globe without laughing. So.
A message that I got a couple weeks ago. Chris, I have to commend you on your courage to examine the flat Earth theory. I've always ridiculed the theory myself until you inspired me to approach it with an open mind. I've been literally obsessed with researching it since you spoke about it on your show. I'm sure thousands of other listeners are doing the same. This was from a couple weeks ago when I just simply mentioned it. So I want to give that same gratitude to you, because you're the one that opened my eyes, at least your films were, to start going down this path. Because, when I first heard about it, I thought Flat Earth Society, that was just, I thought it was a joke. And they've tried to play it out as if it's some kind of joke or something like that. But you present the evidence so clearly, concisely, and very down to earth as well, that you can't deny it.
And thank you. And by the way, that show that you mentioned you were on, I actually caught that. I watched part of that because, I was looking and seeing who was doing stuff, and I was surprised to see you on there. And I was listening to guys, and I know you guys were kind of joking around here and there, but you didn't immediately slam the topic into the ground, which was great.
Oh, I tried to approach it really cautiously because it was the first time talking about it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I don't necessarily believe this, but this is what, the evidence says.
Yeah.
You've got to be cautious like that.
As far as what I did with my narrative, what I really wanted to do was, because I had heard all the old arguments, which I really tried to stay away from, which was usually nerd on nerd crime, which was, people arguing, throwing out physics and all sorts of fun math, and it would never go anywhere. And plus it was hard to listen to, because 15 minutes into the argument you'd be going, okay, what formula are we looking at again, and who's trying to prove what? So when I looked at it, I realized that after I'd gone through, I was looking at really broad strokes that general people could understand. People that knew conspiracy stuff and knew how people acted. And things you would expect, like for, the Antarctica thing was a perfect example. We know full well the oil companies would want to go down there, but they're not allowed to go down there. The space program, we know that, that things are just screwy up there, but you don't know why, they're screwy, and just different little aspects. And so when I broke it down, I realized after I did the guide, when I was doing the clues, I didn't know until, the next day what the clue was going to be. But when I saw it, I knew it right away. I woke up and I'd say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And, I'd lay out the script and go through it. And if it made sense to me, I'd do it. And I always said, it's like, look, if I don't like it, if I get to the end of it and I start watching it, it doesn't do anything for me, I'll throw it away. I didn't throw away anything, which was amazing. I thought for sure I'd get to something that's going, nope, it's not working. And I'd throw it away. And none of the clues, including number 11, which you haven't seen yet, none of the clues got feedback from people where they said, I totally disagree. You're totally off base. The response has been really, really good. I finally turned on the likes and dislikes in YouTube because I didn't want, to get hammered. But the only point of contention at all of any of them, again, I'm still waiting for a debunker to call me up. Penn Jillette, where are you? So the sorry.
Well, believe it or not, but that show I did with Kev Baker and the rest of them, that was prior to watching Flat Earth Clues. Like I had just like came across that information like a couple days before or a day before or something like that. The night before. Yeah, somebody posted it on Facebook and I said, damn it, that's it. Okay, this is the millionth and first time I'm seeing this. I'm going to look into it. And so some of the conclusions that I was drawing were the same conclusions that you present in Flat Earth Clues, which I think that's why I looked at that research and went, wow, okay, this guy is on the same thinking pattern that I am, regarding this information.
Yeah, and there's there's other people that have had stuff out there for quite a while. Eric Dubé has some wonderful stuff out there. NASA Channel, his stuff is a little bit dated, but his interview is Matt Boylan from Montreal, Canada. He's excellent. My Perspective is excellent. There's not that many guys that are doing it. Kella Jagia, one of the worst YouTube names ever because I can't even spell it. His is pretty good. Cesar is good. There, I can't remember which one you watched, but there's so many little things, and it's not just the flat Earth stuff. Well, that's the part that I love so much. It's not just the flat Earth stuff that's getting out there. It's the stuff that's dovetailing into the flat Earth stuff because other conspiracies are starting to make more sense in this model. And so, like when you watch the funny thing happened from the Earth to the moon. That wasn't a flat Earth thing at all. Right. But you're looking at it and you're going, so what's going, it makes you squint a little harder when you're looking at it. And it's the same thing with several things.
Who is that guy? Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yeah.
Okay. I heard him say in an interview that the Earth isn't actually round. It's more of a pear shape.
Neil
and I'm
deGrasse.
Like, okay, well, what about these pictures that are around here?
Yeah, that one. And honestly, I do not think he's in on it. I do not think he knows. He came on, for those of you who don't know what Chris is talking about here. Neil deGrasse Tyson, basically NASA's poster boy, went to a campus and he said, just off the cuff, he's going, oh, by the way, Earth isn't a perfect sphere. He goes, first he says it's an oblate spheroid, which means, it's kind of a squish sphere. And then without even being coaxed, he goes, and on top of that, it's heavier on the bottom than it is on the top, so it's sort of pear-shaped. I'm going, it's like, what are you doing? Because every NASA image that's ever been released, is always a perfect sphere all the way down to the pixel. I mean, Google Earth, look at it. Google Earth is a perfect sphere. Everything is a perfect sphere. So you got your lead guy from NASA coming out there and saying, oh, by the way, it's pear-shaped. Why would you do that? It's ridiculous. But for me, I don't think he's in on it because it is you've heard the term need to know. This is one of those super, super high level need to know issues that even now I'm pretty sure, because I looked it up. I want to make sure, because I was arguing with some people about this. I'm pretty sure he hasn't gone up to space, even though he should be the guy to go up to space. And had he gone up, of course you can't go up. So, maybe he was told that they would have to simulate it, but the point is, like the astronauts that are doing the ISS space station stuff in the flight simulator, even because they're Air Force employees, they don't have to be let in on the loop because, they're under contract. They're under non-disclosure agreements. All you have to do is say, okay, here's what you're going to do when you get up in that 727, they call it the vomit comet. When you get to 0G, you're going to do this and this and this. They don't even have the right to ask why they're doing it. So even they're not told, in my opinion.
Right.
But Neil deGrasse Tyson, I almost guarantee he's not in it. Because you need someone like that with that genuine enthusiasm, that genuine sense of, sense of authenticity, as opposed to like Neil Armstrong, who looked like somebody had shot his dog every single time you saw him on camera. So
right. I started looking at some videos, and I rewound the clock a little bit, so we got a couple more minutes left.
Oh, that's fine.
But I started looking at some videos of people sending, teddy bears and things like that to space with big helium balloons. And all of the videos that I came across showed the horizon as flat, except for the ones that were using fisheye lenses.
Oh, you mean the Red Bull one?
Well, the Red Bull one, for instance. Yeah. But even amateur videos, all of them are flat, except for the ones using fisheye lenses. I mean, I think what's really going to do it is if we just send our own damn balloon up there and just prove it once and for all. But then people will say that we faked it too.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no winning.
Yeah, and the fisheye lens is one of those things that's been around for years and years and years. So, and it gives a great perspective at high altitudes. So it's not like everybody's, putting in fisheye lenses to be sinister. A lot of them are just putting in fisheye lenses because that's the best way the best footage you're going to get. But at the same time, it doesn't help. It doesn't help my cause or anybody else when they're trying to prove stuff. At high altitude stuff is just so tough to prove anyway,
right?
Because you really got to get up there, and those high altitude balloons, they blow before I think 130,000 feet.
I was just about to say you can't do it because you hit the dome and snap.
Well, yeah. Well, again, the why the private space programs are never ever going to be allowed because you just can't do it. You cannot let people do that. Again, the argument is like, why don't we have flying cars right now? No, you're never going to have flying cars. They're not going to let people. The Jetsons scenario. Yeah, that's not happening. That's why the people that are in the spaceships flying around up, the maintenance teams and the janitors, yeah, they can do whatever they want, but they're stuck too. They can't come down here, and we can't go up there. It's kind of a nice little balance at the moment.
Right. Yeah. I want to ask you one final question, and I put an extra 10 minutes on the clock before the outro hits.
That's fine.
We got about 10 more minutes. Why is it so important if we live in a flat Earth, if we live, in the flat Earth model? Why is it so important for people to understand that they're living in a flat Earth model? I mean, how does that change reality? One thing that people were asking earlier in the very beginning of the broadcast is, well, how is it going to stop the police state to determine whether the Earth is flat or not? And my answer to them was, it's not up to us. It's up to you to stop all that. But how does it change reality?
Okay. If we have under 10 minutes, I can still do it. Clue number 11, which you haven't looked at, but maybe some of the other people have, I called it Souls in the System. And it goes into a very specific reason why it's important. And that is, it really touched on, and I'll give the little backstory. I opened that video with talking about that the same guy that did Funny Thing Happened from the Earth to the Moon when he did Astronauts Gone Wild, which was Astronauts Gone Wild is a tough video to watch because I don't like seeing senior citizens get picked on.
Right. I feel the same way about that guy. Yeah, that guy was kind of douchey.
He was a jerk.
Yeah.
And if he's listening, look. But what he did was he found something that was very, very interesting, and he didn't even know it. He didn't even know what he had stumbled upon because I didn't see it until years later, and that was during the process, kind of like as a gag, he asked the astronauts to swear on the Bible. Swear that they had gone to the moon. Now, and I know in the video I said he did it with all of them beforehand. And he kind of mixed it in. Some were before, some were after. But he asked all of them, anybody could, put your hand on the Bible and swear that you went to the moon. And no one would. And that kind of bugged me. Kind of like, how the Apollo stuff bugged me because I was going, why would they not put their hand on there? Why would they? It's just perjury, right? And it's not even court perjury. Court perjury. Everyone knows that's kind of serious. But if if I came to your house right now and said, "Put your hand on the Bible," you're not going to care, right? But none of these guys would do it. In fact, they wouldn't even touch that Bible if they could help it. It was like it was radioactive, and I couldn't understand why. And then it occurred to me. It's like I get it because this was the only group of astronauts that was told why they had to fake it. And it's like, look, it's an enclosed system. And once that sunk into their heads over the years, what an enclosed system does, and if you want to say flat Earth or dome or Truman Show, whatever you want to say it, what the enclosed system does is it reminds you that for whatever reason, you are not necessarily being watched, but being looked after. And if you're being looked after, then you fall into that whole creator argument. And so for them, putting their hand on a Bible and swearing, it didn't have to even be a Bible, right? It could have been nothing. It could have been literally an encyclopedia. If you put your hand on that, or you didn't even have to put your hand on it, you're swearing against something is real. It's one thing to be based on faith, but it's a whole other thing to see it for yourself or told that, look, the structure is actually real or see pictures. And so when people say, why is this so important to the enclosed system be known? And it's because everything changes. It's not just a spiritual shift. Everything changes, in my opinion, towards the good. And people say, well, it's just another form of police state. No, it's not, because you will make better decisions because now you've literally have the devil and the angel on your shoulder And you can see up above that there's something else bigger than you, and your decisions matter. You're accountable. And at that point, it's like, okay, are you going to lie? Are you going to cheat? You're going to steal? You're going to do it for real? If you absolutely know, I mean, yeah, the sky looks the same. You can't tell any different. But if it is different, you're going to act differently. You're going to commit murder. I guarantee that if the enclosed system was announced on a global basis, wars would stop entirely. Hate crimes, done, with the exception of the psychopaths, of course. Every little aspect of all the bad things that we are, I think, get better. And it's such a positive thing. And I'm not necessarily the most spiritual guy in the world, but I see what the potential of what we could be. And the old saying is, we're only as good as what we can get away with. Well, what if you can get away with a lot less? What happens then? It's not to say you wouldn't be able to have fun. You want to go out and party and have a great time. That's not a big deal. But doing something malicious against somebody else, you're going to think twice. And on a large scale, that's just an amazing thing. Again, wars. Are you gonna steal children? No. You're gonna gun somebody down the street? Probably not. You're gonna make more. You're gonna think a lot more before you make what, in my opinion, the wrong or the destructive decision. And for me, that's the whole crux of it. So when I finally got to Clue 11, that was my message. It was like, look, you need to know about this, because if you know, and if they let you know, everything changes overnight, and it gets better. This is our chance. So,
it's a small world after all. They've told us over and over and over again.
Yeah, we're all in it together at that point. We all become one big family. It sounds like a silly kumbaya moment, but it's true. You're all in the same apartment, so you might as well get along. And then we see where things go from there. And I think it's a very positive message.
I think so as well. And somebody just commented, Chris. Hold on, it slipped by me. Here it is. Chris, I do love you and Cherie and all the hosts on this great network you've provided. I just personally, at this time, here and now, I don't care if the earth is flat, hollow, spherical, concave, or convex. I care that people actually take control of their own destinies. And I wholeheartedly agree with that, except for the most hopelessly enslaved is the man that believes he's free. And we've broken the barriers of everything from the political system to the religions to every single bar that's in front of you. And we've shown you here are the bars, and it's only through seeing the bars that you're able to break free. Now, let's say that we do live in a construct that is artificial, that has a dome around it. We need to see those barriers, and we need to break ourselves out of there.
Yeah, that's
where I stand on it.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a chance here, and I have no doubt in my mind that it is real. Give it half a chance. And I know there's some people that want to hold on to the globe, and I don't blame you. I would have done the same thing. But if you look hard enough, it's right there in front of you, and we have a chance to do something really amazing here. And that's what I'm pushing for.
To quote Sky News, "The sun is round, we assure you. It just looks flat on your TV." They said that today while they were covering the solar eclipse. It was ridiculous. I was like, oh, wow, how coincidental that we're talking about this tonight. And here they are saying this.
That's a real article?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was during the live coverage of the solar eclipse from today.
They actually said it looks flat.
Yeah.
But it's really...
We assure you it's round. It just looks flat on your TV. See,
this thing is getting traction on a weird level, and I'm still trying to get my head around it, because I anyone listening, look, this is not what I wanted to do. You really think I wanted to champion the worst conspiracy of them all? and then, I'm going to pick the worst one, the one that everybody laughs at, the one you're most likely to be locked up for. And I'm going to all of a sudden overnight become a champion of it and preach it, not even just say, oh yeah, it's probably possible. No, I'm going to start screaming it, make videos, put my name and phone number on there, my home address, so that people don't think I'm a disinfo guy. And so far, again, I'm waiting to be shot down, but no one's. It's just been this wonderful wave of positive reinforcement, which makes me think there may be more to it.
Well, and not only that, it means that the consciousness of humanity is ready for these kinds of ideas, and ready for, even if it's not exactly like a flat Earth, at least people are opening their minds to other possibilities out there. And but see, I see this with on the air of caution, with a little bit of caution, okay? Because it's almost like 2012, the whole idea of 2012, it took off, but Hollywood hijacked it, and then they turned it into a horrible movie. And so I'm afraid they're going to hijack this idea now, and we're going to have to watch 2 hours of John Cusack playing Admiral Byrd.
And normally I would be with you. Normally I would, but they can't. They can't in this case. They wouldn't be allowed to. I mean, because for the very fact that the moon thing was never done. The moon thing was no moon landing mission was ever put in a Hollywood movie because of this. And if you're not going to go that far, no, I so highly doubt that Hollywood would, because they've had plenty of chances to do it. The closest they did was Journey to the Center of the Earth, or the Brendan Fraser one, where he went inside, into the earth. But I just can't see him doing it because it's too big. It's too big. We get too many people thinking. You got to remember, if they've been trying to repress this for so long, they're not going to bring it. But I love your idea, but I just can't see Hollywood hijacking it. But at the same time, if somebody actually calls me up for a movie deal, I will let you know.
Excellent.
Please do.
Mark, thank you so much for everything you're doing, and for being brave enough to stand up and talk about this kind of stuff, because you've inspired so many people just in the month. You said it was a month.
It's been a month as of today.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
It's only been a month. Wow.
Over the course of the next few months, it's just going to keep spreading like wildfire, because I think the consciousness is ready. People are ready. They can see that we live in a matrix. They understand that the reptiles from Nibiru built it. They can go along with all that. However, let's take the next step now and realize what this matrix really is. And I'm just kidding about the reptiles from Nibiru, of course.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I mean, there's more interviews to come. I mean, I'm not soliciting. People just keep calling me. So there's something going on. I don't know what it is, but I'm just going to keep rolling with it.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Have a great evening. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Mark Sargent, and check out Flat Earth Clues on YouTube. I don't have the website in front of me. I'm sorry. I'm trying to reset the clock here because we went a little bit of overtime, as people can tell. So, what did you think?
I thought it was a very stimulating conversation. Even if, I think if it's a flat Earth, then it's kind of like a coin, where there's another side to this, and we're just not seeing it.
I wanted to bring that up, but I didn't want to make the interview too far, because I don't know what Mark's got going on tomorrow, so I didn't want to keep him too late.
Well, we've got to get him back on.
Yes, we will definitely do that, and we'll leave everybody with that.
Definitely.
So, everybody, thank you very much for tuning in this evening, and don't forget, good morning. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening,
and good
night. Who's coming on tomorrow?
We have got a packed show tomorrow. We have got Kevin in Minnesota and Todd C. Elliott for the first and second hours, and then Daniel Estelin for the third hour.
It's been a while since we've talked to Daniel.
Definitely.
So I'm looking forward to that. Tomorrow we'll talk about the police state, ladies and gentlemen. So everybody who tuned in for police state stuff tonight, stay tuned. Tomorrow, Daniel Estelin, we'll talk about Bilderberg and all of the secret things that are going on. And maybe they're conspiring to keep the flat Earth hidden from you.
Yep. We
love you. Kiss the one you love right now. You never know when the last time is going to be. We will be returning to our regularly scheduled deprogramming in just a few minutes right here on TFR.
Love you guys.
Outlaws to the game like Thomas Paine was. They masquerade us. Who's to blame us now? Set to explode like a hand grenade does. No peace to seize the police to show peace. Unleash beef, no relief. Peace underneath the beast that lies dormant. Forced to use force, torture, use caution. Tossed to the ground like a subliminal blinded. Like KRS-One, cause I'm criminal minded. I run with soldiers amongst the vultures. Now you're under control. Cause you do what they told you.
Hey, Mark.